Hello, and wow, I really cannot thank you guys enough for the flood of support you've all given me since that family tree video. It's astounded me how much you loved it, and I'm so excited to give you more. One of the most requested trees in the comments was one I'm hyped to do. Tigerstars. And I think it's fitting to cover the evil poster boy of Warriors right after the good poster boy, so that's what I'm doing. For those who didn't watch my Firestars family tree video, welcome! This is going to be an intermediate level video where I expect you to have a basic foundation in genetics as a whole, but I'll explain the specific genes I cover as well as more complicated or advanced terminology. So that you aren't stuck waiting for a distant relative of his who's never going to show up, here's every cat who will be wearing a pair of jeans today. Okay, so first off, Tigerstar's a basic bitch! He's just a mackerel brown tabby. So he's black, which is capital B, and then a goatee, coded by capital A, makes him into a brown tabby. And then he has one capital MC for mackerel. Mackerel and classic are on the same locus, with mackerel being dominant over classic, which is represented by recessive little MC. I usually use classic patterns to make a cat look bigger and prefer mackerel for smaller cats, but Tigerstar is an exception because his name is fucking Tigerstar. He can't have stripes that aren't tiger-shaped, come on now. With a handful of tiny exceptions, we don't know anything about cat eye color genes, so I'll be sticking with canon or personal choice, so I can make Tigerstar's eyes anything but blue. More on blue eyes later. I'm intentionally leaving the rest of his genes unknown so that I can fill in recessives as I need them later. His mom is super easy. She's a solid black cat who is inexplicably named Leopardfoot? I'd question if these cats knew about melanistic leopards, but then I'd have to question how cats know about leopards at all, and let's not have that crisis today, She's black like Tigerstar, so capital B, but unlike Tigerstar, she's solid, so she gets two little A's to make her a goatee. She doesn't have the capital A that causes a goatee, which would confine her black to stripes. This also means that she can only give Tigerstar little A's, making him heterozygous on the A locus. Sorry, Leopardfoot, but that's all you've got for us. As described in the books, I can't help but see Pinestar as cinnamon, and he's going to be a cinnamon tabby. Yes, the books don't describe him as having stripes, but I'm giving him stripes for two reasons. One, the genetic angle. Tigerstar must be a tabby, because his name is fucking Tiger, and I'm not about to let nonsensical names run in the family. And also, he's the OG broad-shouldered brown tabby Tom, who all the tiger clones, who are also tabbies, are clones of. Making him not a tabby is out of the question. But a dominant phenotype can't result from two recessive parents because you can't carry a dominant gene. One of the parents has to be a tabby, and it's less disruptive to give it to Pinestar than to Leopardfoot. That being said, you can, if Pinestar being stripeless is important to you, make him a heterozygous tick tabby. Ticked is a modifier of a goatee that removes most stripes. Homozygotes lose more stripes than heterozygotes, but ticked is dominant and Tigerstar isn't ticked, so Pinestar would have to be heterozygous. That's as close to no stripes as you're gonna get with him. But, reason number 2 for striping his ass up, I think it's more fun if he looks exactly like a palette swap Tigerstar, original OC Do Not Steal style. I just love it when animal characters parallel each other's designs, but with different colors. So that's what I'm going with. Anyway, that makes Pinestar B1B1 on the black locus, because B1 codes for cinnamon. That means he can only give B1s, making Tigerstar's genotype here capital B B1. Tigerstar is black, but he's carrying his dad's cinnamon. By the way, cinnamon is not only recessive to black's capital B, but also to chocolate's little b. This is a surprise tool that'll help us later! Shit, I completely forgot about hair type, hold on. Short hairs are dominant with capital L, and long hairs are recessive with little l. Mom is a short hair, so at least one capital L, and dad is a long hair, so that's two little l's. Tigerstar is also a long hair. He gets one little l from dad, since that's all he can pass, but he needs another from mom. That's fine, we'll just make her heterozygous, and she gives that hidden recessive little l to Tigerstar. Thankfully, he's the only surviving member of his litter, so he's the only kid we have to worry about. Hold on, that sounds like a really mean thing to say. Yeah, thank God all these fucking kittens died, so I don't have to think about them. They're fictional kittens, it's fine. Anyway, Tigerstar's bachelorette number 1 was Goldenflower, who is described in the books as pale ginger, which sounds like cream to me. Cream is dilute ginger, so a cat who has the genes for both ginger and dilute. Dilution is a simple recessive, represented by little d, but ginger is a bit more complicated. Goldenflower's sex chromosomes are XX, and Tigerstar's are XY. Ginger is sex-linked, meaning the locus for it is located on the X chromosome. So Goldenflower has 2 copies like normal, but Tigerstar only gets 1 because there's no second X for a second allele to be on. The Ginger locus's 2 alleles are capital O for Ginger and little o for non-Ginger. Ginger is sex-linked and codominant, so a heterozygous XX cat would be a tortoiseshell. This is a problem. If Goldenflower is just cream, not tortoiseshell, that makes her capital O, so she can only pass capital O's on to her kids. Since she's the only one giving Bramblestar an X, because Tigerstar is giving him a Y instead, that would make Bramblestar Ginger. So can we cheat by making Goldenflower Fawn, which looks similar to cream but is dilute cinnamon and thus black-based? Well, no. XX Torty Tawnypelt does have Ginger, and she can't get it from Tigerstar because he only has 1 single little O to pass. She has to get her capital O from Mom. That means Goldenflower has to have both capital O for Ginger to give to Tawnypelt, and a little o non-Ginger to give to Bramblestar. That means she has to be a tortoiseshell. Now, there is the option of making her a quote-unquote cryptic tortie. It is possible for a tortie to end up not showing one of their base colors for a variety of reasons. It is realistic, however extremely unlikely, but I also just don't personally like doing it. I feel like it kind of defeats the purpose of the challenge, at least for me, so we'll need to find another way to keep her looking like herself. Remember, torties aren't just black and ginger, they're black base and ginger base, which means that the non-ginger color can be anything on the B locus. Black, chocolate, cinnamon, or their dilutions. I've said before that cream looks a lot like fawn, which is dilute cinnamon, so Goldenflower is going to be a fawn and cream tortoiseshell. To do that genetically, she's getting 2 B1 alleles just like Pinestar did. She also needs 2 recessive little d's to dilute her ginger and cinnamon into cream and fawn. That being said, I'm still only giving her a little bit of fawn. She's not cryptic, but she is mostly cream. To help blend in and hide that fawn, I'm also making her a tabby so that both her ginger and her fawn have stripes. That's 1 capital A allele minimum. The Goldenflower in my mind is huge, so I'm making her a classic tabby. That's 2 little MCs since it's recessive. She's also described as sleek, which I think makes her a short hair. That's 1 capital L, and that's all she's got for now. On to their kids. Bramblestar is Tigerstar 2... Okay, he's not Tigerstar 2, that's a different guy, but you get what I mean. Tiger Clone 1, identical to Daddy. That means he's getting, all from Dad, capital B black, capital A agouti, capital MC mackerel, and an entire Y chromosome. From Mom, as mentioned before, 1 little O. She also only has little MCs to give him on the MC locus, and only B1s to give him on the black locus, so he ends up being heterozygous on both of those loci. And that's him. Shit, hair type again. Tigerstar's long hair, so he can only give little L's for long hair. Goldenflower's carrying long hair now, it's fine. I won't be going into his bio kids with Squirrel Flight because they're boring! I made Squirrel Flight black-based in my Firestars family tree video, so there's not much here that's interesting enough to do. Sorry. That means we're on to Tawnypelt. Normally my goal is to make a cat look as book accurate as possible, but there's a few times where my personal preference is going to shine through, and that's true of Tawnypelt. In canon, she's not dilute, but I want her to be dilute because I just prefer drawing her this way. I think she looks cooler. But she's still a low white calico. I'm not changing that. A calico is just a tortoiseshell with white. The white spotting allele is S, codominant with W, which codes for no white. This is a problem. In order for Tawnypelt to have white, she needs to get that S from somewhere, either Tigerstar or Goldenflower. In canon, neither has white, but I have to give it to someone. I really don't want to give it to Tigerstar for a few reasons. 1, I just don't want to. I think it'd interrupt his design and make him look less like himself. 2, the Tiger clones need to look like him, and I don't want to have to give all of them white too. And 3, we covered his parents already, and if he has white, so does one of them. He'd need to get the S from somewhere. I'm not interrupting 2 designs for this. Goldenflower, on the other hand, has no other family on this tree, and that means I don't care about them or their genes. With one exception. I didn't include him in the larger tree because I didn't want to have to also draw Patchpelt, but Goldenflower is also Swiftpaw's mom, and he's high white, which is homozygous SS, so he has to get an S from Goldenflower. So even though I won't be covering him in his entirety, in Swiftpaw's honor, here's Goldenflower's 1 single S. She gives it to Tawnypelt too, letting her be low white SW. Quick side note, S is codominant, SW cats are under 50% white, SS cats are over 50% white. That's what low and high white mean. The exact amount and shape of white is largely polygenetic and partially developmental, so I'm not worried about kids having different white markings from their parents, especially when only one parent is white on them. Tawnypelt's blue patches are dilute black, so she gets Tigerstar's capital B, but because Goldenflower is homozygous B1b1, just like Bramblestar, Tawnypelt must have a B1 next to her capital B. Tawnypelt is also not a tabby, so she needs 2 little A's, which is easy. Both Tigerstar and Goldenflower are tabbies, but we already know that Tigerstar is heterozygous because he got his little A from Leopardfoot. And Goldenflower can be carrying too, that's fine. Now, despite not being a tabby, we're still going to see stripes on Tawnypelt's ginger parts. In fact, all ginger cats, even if they're not genetically tabbies, look as if they are tabbies. This is because ginger is epistatic to non-agouti. That's just a fancy way of saying that ginger overwrites non-agouti alleles and stops them from working. This is hilarious to me for reasons I cannot articulate. Anyway, since she's not a tiger clone, I'm comfortable giving her classic stripes. Goldenflower is already classic, so she gives one of her little MCs like she did for Bramblestar, but she also needs a second one from Dad. That's fine, it's recessive, he's carrying it. It could have come from either of his parents since it's recessive, but I think it's fun to say that it came from Leopardfoot because she hasn't gotten to do much yet. Because Goldenflower is dilute, she must pass a little D on to Tawnypelt. Tigerstar will just carry the little D he gives to her, which he could have gotten from either parent. Again, it's recessive, so it doesn't matter. That lets her be dilute. If you want her to look more book accurate or don't like dilute Tawnypelt, then just say she gets Tigerstar's capital D and ends up heterozygous. But I like her dilute. She's long hair by the same means as Bramblestar. Her branch of the tree is interesting because I already did her son, Tigerheartstar's genes in another video, the Firestar one. That means we already know what he has to be. Capital B, capital D, 2 little I's for inhibitor, heterozygous for tabby, heterozygous little MC for classic, and homozygous little L for long hair. Yes, he's a tiger clone, but yes, he's classic. I do this on purpose symbolically. Something, I see his character is very much living in various shadows and not fully living up to any of them, or fitting into all the shoes he's been given. But this is Murphy Does Gene Puzzles video, not the Murphy cries and beats the table about how much she loves Tigerheartstar video, so just accept that my version of him is classic. I'm also not going to show his little I homozygosity on the screen for this. He is still little I, but that's not relevant to this video. Everyone else on this tree is also little I, so we don't need to specify. And if you want to know what I is, go watch Firestar's family tree or my inhibitor and widebanding video. Anyway, we're in luck because most of this can just come from Tawnypelt. She gives him her capital B for black, one of her little MCs for classic, one of her little L's for long hair, and her one little A that he needs to carry for Shadowsight's sake. She's also going to give him her little O, which prevents him from being ginger. He's male, so there's no second allele there. The only things she can't give him are his capital A and his capital D. That's where Rowan-Claw comes in. Tawnypelt's accidentally gender-fluid husband/wife is described as a dark ginger tabby, and so a dark ginger tabby he shall be. That's 1 capital O and nothing else because of the Y chromosome. Due to aforementioned ginger non-agouti epistasis, if he was alone, he could be genetically solid, but Tigerheartstar needs his stripes, so he's going to get them from Rowan-Claw. That's at least 1 capital A. He's also not dilute, so at least 1 capital D, that he also gives to Tigerheartstar. I'm also making Rowan-Claw a mackerel tabby, but he's carrying little MC so that Tigerheartstar can get that too. He doesn't have any white on him, that's a WW homozygote. Thankfully, Mommy Tawnypelt also has a W to pass, so Tigerheartstar can stay whiteless. Rowan-Claw is a short hair, so he has 1 capital L, but we'll also make him carry little L for long hair so that he can give it to Tigerheartstar. Their other 2 kids, Flametail and Dawnpelt, are also both WW homozygotes by the same means as Tigerheartstar. They, however, are short hairs, so they get Rowan-Claw's capital L, but they also must carry Tawnypelt's little L because she can't give them anything else. Tawnypelt also gives both of them her capital O. For Flametail, this is all he gets because he's XY. That makes him ginger. Again, he can have a capital A or not. I'm just going to go ahead and give him Rowan-Claws, but he has to be heterozygous because Tawnypelt can only give little A's. In my mind, he's a mackerel, so same process. Rowan-Claw gives him his capital MC, but Tawnypelt is homozygous recessive, so Flametail is heterozygous here. His wiki says he has blue eyes, but he can't without white. I could give him white because Tawnypelt has an S to pass, but I think just changing his eye color is less noticeable. Green can look a lot like blue, but white always stands out. Dawnpelt's not that different. She's a cream mackerel tabby, which is just dilute Flametail. Same process as Flametail for her A and MC loci, as well as her L and W loci. She's also ginger, since cream is dilute ginger, but the process is a bit different. Unlike XY Flametail, XX Dawnpelt needs 2 capital O's. Not a problem. Tawnypelt's a tortie, so she's got that 1 capital O to give, and Rowan-Claw's single X has a capital O on it too. Easy. For dilution, she gets one little D from Tawnypelt by necessity, and Rowan Claw can just carry it. I already covered Shadow Sight in the Firestar's family tree video, so if you want to see him, you should go watch that one. So that's the end of that lineage. Let's fly all the way back up to Tigerstar so we can take a look at Bachelorette number 2, my darling idiot Sasha. Should've stayed on the boat. Why the fuck did you leave the boat? I'd love to make her a purebred Siamese for the prestige, but we'd be fucking up breed standards so much that, She is the pattern Siamese, though, which is not synonymous with the breed, don't get confused. Siamese is a type of albino on the albino locus, which is the C locus. Capital C codes for a normal, non-albino cat, just a regular guy. We call this full color. After that in the dominance order is CS, which codes for Siamese. Siamese is incompletely dominant with CB, which is sepia. Sepia looks like Siamese, but is really dark, basically. 2 copies of CS make a cat Siamese. 2 copies of CB make a cat sepia. 1 copy of CS and 1 copy of CB together make mink, which is midway between the light Siamese and the dark sepia. All 3 of these phenotypes, Siamese, mink, and sepia, are called points, since the points of the cat, ears, muzzle, paws, and tail, are all darker than the rest of the cat. Anyway, Sasha has the Siamese phenotype, so she's homozygous CSCS. I know her canon design doesn't have a face marking, but points are temperature-sensitive markings, so we can minimize it by just saying she's very warm. Looking at her, it does happen that black Siamese cats, called seal, look more brown than black, but Sasha's points look distinctly brown to me. So I'm going to make her a chocolate Siamese. That's 1 little B, and as I leave that second allele blank, know that I am winking at you as hard as I can. She doesn't have any canon white, but I already know that I'll need to give her some for HAWKFROST, so here's just a little white on her chin and an S allele to go along with it. And she's short hair, so 1 capital L. Looking good. Since she's mating with Tigerstar, I'm going to write his C locus in too. He's not any kind of point, so he just gets 1 capital C. He only needs the 1. I am winking even harder. Let's start with the simplest of their kids. Tadpole is a solid black short hair. He gets Tigerstar's single capital B for blacks. Both parents have little A's they can pass, and he gets his capital L short hair from Sasha, but he's heterozygous since Tigerstar can only pass long hair. Lastly, he's not a point, so Tigerstar gives him his capital C, but he's carrying CS because of Mom. Oh, HAWKFROST time. MOTHWING time. Before I go insane, I want to get out of the way that both HAWKFROST and MOTHWING are long hairs, which is the same process for both of them. Sasha carries little L now, and Tigerstar only has little L's, so they can both be homozygous with no problem. Now, starting with HAWKFROST. So similar to Tawnypelt, I'm taking a slight deviation from strict canon descriptions for the sake of a really, really cool design. I see a lot of point HAWKFROST and I adore them, so that's what I'll be doing. He's still a brown tabby tom and a tux, and I'm not changing that, I'm just adding point. But I don't want him Siamese because that's too light. He wouldn't really look like a brown tabby anymore. But he also can't be sepia because that requires CB homozygosity, and Sasha only has CS's. Recall. My second wink. Tigerstar only needs 1 capital C to be full color. His other C locus allele is... CB. Recessives can stay hidden in a lineage for countless generations. He could have gotten it from either parent, and it doesn't matter. He's got it, he gives it to HAWKFROST, boom, mink HAWKFROST. Now, even a mink cat can be pretty light-colored, but we have a fact up our sleeve. As mentioned earlier, all point patterns, Siamese, mink, and sepia, are temperature sensitive. The colder the cat is, the darker they will be. Not like standing in a snowstorm won't turn a point cat black in an hour, but like overall, and it's mostly internal temperature. Here's a cold Siamese and here's a warm Siamese to give you an idea. So HAWKFROST is just on the colder side of things. I think it's fitting for his personality. Like I said, we don't know jack or shit about eye color genes, with a handful of exceptions. It's time to cover those exceptions. Siamese cats always have blue eyes. Always. If a cat isn't Siamese, they can only have blue eyes if they have enough white. Or one of the several hundred blue eyes genes that pop up now and then, I guess, but I just hate using those. Mink cats are weird. Mink cats always have green eyes unless their white lets them have blue eyes instead. Sepia cats have the same eye color rules as non-points, just any color except blue unless they have enough white. Anyway, Sasha's blue eyes come from being Siamese. She's also going to give that S allele of hers to HAWKFROST so that he also gets some white. Without that white, his eyes would be green because he's a mink, but because he's a tux, they can stay blue. Whenever we as artists put Bramblestar and HAWKFROST next to each other, we have to ask ourselves how we're gonna use different shades of brown to distinguish them. I have two favorites here. Either making HAWKFROST less rufused than Bramblestar so he's grayer between the stripes, or making him chocolate instead of black so that his stripes are brown too. The latter is more genetically interesting, so let's chocolate our HAWKFROST. Sasha's already chocolate, so she gives him her little B. We established earlier that Tigerstar has a capital B from his mom, and a B1 from his cinnamon dad. And remember, cinnamon is recessive to chocolate, so if he gives that to HAWKFROST, he will, much like a convenience store shelf 2 days after Valentine's, only display chocolate. He's also a tabby. Tigerstar's got that capital A, but Sasha only has little a's, so he must be heterozygous. And he's a tiger clone, so we're making a mackerel. Tigerstar can give him the capital MC for that. But we don't know what Sasha has on her MC locus because she's solid, so we can't see it. So we don't know what HAWKFROST's second allele is here. Don't like Mink Point HAWKFROST? Want him to look more like his canon description? Well, Tigerstar has that capital C. Just put that in there instead. Bada bing, bada boom, perfectly possible. But I like his ass minked. And that's HAWKFROST's unnecessarily complicated genome. I love making him unreasonably complex. The most unique tiger clone. And his sister's even worse. Let's talk tabby. Mothwing is quote-unquote dappled, which I'm taking to mean a spotted tabby. Spotted is the result of polygenes acting on a mackerel tabby, so she'll get Tigerstar's capital A and capital MC. Since spotted is polygenetic, if Sasha was a tabby, she'd probably also be spotted. HAWKFROST is still just a regular mackerel tabby, though. Slightly unlikely that Kid 1 ends up way on one end of the gradient, while Kid 2 ends up clean the other side of it, but it happens more often than you'd think. Makes me curious what Tadpole would look like as a tabby. Anyway, Mothwing has no white spotting, so she gets 1 W from each parent. Now the complicated part. Mothwing is supposed to be quote-unquote golden, which I think is supposed to mean ginger, but we can't do that because her Honey Nut Cheerios-ass parents only have little O's. Not a problem. In fact, I am going to pull the same trick. Okay, well, no, not really. Actually, not really. Something similar to it, though. Tigerstar's already carrying cinnamon from Pine Star, but I didn't fill in Sasha's second black locus allele. That's because it's also cinnamon. Here's normally where I'd slap the fawn on her. Fawn is diluted cinnamon, and it makes a convincing fake cream, so the easiest thing to do would be the same trick thrice, as I said before. Sasha can be carrying a little d for dilution and gives it to Mothwing no problem, since it's recessive, and Tigerstar just gives her the same little d that he already gave to Tawnypelt. And that works fine. That is one possible solution, but Mothwing is described as golden, and when I hear golden, I imagine something a bit more saturated than Fawn normally gets. So that's not what I'll be doing to Mothwing, but it is genetically possible. So she's not getting dilute, but we'll still need her to be cinnamon. There's 2 roads we can go down from here. The one that I personally prefer because it matches my headcanons, and the one that's more strictly book accurate. See, like HAWKFROST, while not canon, I'm a point Mothwing enjoyer, so I'm giving her the same CSCB heterozygosity as HAWKFROST. Cinnamon Mink gets very pale in appearance, so even cold, she's going to have some white parts, but she'll still look distinctly golden. Also, because she's Mink, she needs to have green eyes instead of her canon amber. That's my headcanon Mothwing, but let's prove that I can match her to book description too. She's still a cinnamon tabby, but this time Tigerstar's capital C makes her a non-point full-color cat. Here we'll make her golden by making her literally golden. A golden tabby, which is caused by the polygenetic gradient trait of wide banding. Wide banding makes the agouti hairs between a tabby's stripes a beautiful golden color, but without affecting the color of their stripes. Tigerstar obviously doesn't have too much in the way of wide banding alleles. He's pretty far at one end of the gradient. But Sasha is a solid cat. She doesn't have agouti hairs, so wide banding is nothing to affect. She could have really high wide banding, and we'd never know. So in this scenario, Mothwing just ends up falling on mom's end of the gradient, and HAWKFROST doesn't. Again, unlikely, but far from impossible. And also, again, it raises a lot of curiosity about what Tadpole's got going on under his double little A's. And because she's not a mink anymore, she can have her canon eye color. So there's all 3 Mothwing designs. I'm a sucker for minks, but her canon appearance is also perfectly possible. So pick your favorite. Canon Mothwing or cool Mothwing? And that is my insane HAWKFROST and MOTHWING ramble. Thank you so much for coming to my TED Talk. I definitely did not tie up the guy who was supposed to be giving this talk instead, and security is not about to jump me as soon as this video ends, I promise. So that's Tigerstar's family tree. Or at least that's as much of it as I care about. As of now, I plan on covering Bluestar's tree next time I make one of these, but suggestions are open. Tell me whose tree you'd want to see. I love making these. But for now, bye-bye.